But I completely agree with Adrian in terms of bad things happen when good people do nothing. If you see bad things happening, then you have a moral obligation as a leader. And like I'm 51-year-old person in Australia, like I feel like I'm at that age where if I see bad things happening, I should say something about them. That's called leadership. And it's incumbent on all of us to show leadership. It's a new aspect, yeah, learning that you get criticism from people who don't know you. And I think you just have to compartmentalize some of that. If people don't understand you or how you operate, you don't want to give too much weight to their criticism. So don't pay it too much attention. I don't care what you do outside of your work hours, but while you're at work, just focus on delivering our mission in the best possible way that you can. That's where we got to. It's not perfect, but I actually think that it produces a better culture and better results. And we can prove that because of our company and our culture and what we've created. It's really worked.
Ben, it's really great to have you on. I appreciate you spending the time with us.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. And g'day to Ash's dad.
He'll love that.
Yeah, we were just talking before the show on Ash's dad providing some feedback, which I don't think is relevant. We don't need to get into, but I look forward to meeting Ash's dad soon.
He gives the most candid feedback. You think I'm ruthless. Oof.
Well, the feedback was spot on too. Thanks, Phil.
Ben, we've been connected through a mutual colleague, Adrian Bunter, who I've been on a board with for, I don't know, 8 years maybe, but a legend of the ecosystem that is really passionate about early stage. The work I've seen him do with founders is really impressive, and I'm glad he's been able to connect us.
Yeah, he's a legend. I've known Bunce for over 20 years, I think, and he's been on our board since the get-go. He's been an absolute asset to me. Like, there's no one closer. Very good guy.
Well, let's kick into it. Ben, great to chat. What I would love to just start with and set the scene is, let's wind back to what was that first insight that really led to you forming Employment Hero?
Yeah, well, look, Employment Hero is actually on a continuum of businesses that came from the same insight. So that the original insight is over 20 years ago. I was setting up a law firm. I'd returned from the UK, and it was supposed to be a technology law firm. And I went out, and my father introduced me to a bunch of people that he knew in business and all small business owners, and said, go and ask these guys if there's anything that you could do to help. And so I was hoping that they'd all say, like, technology, we need help with tech. But they all said the same thing. When I asked them what kept them awake at night, they said employment. In this country in particular, you start a business because you're passionate about something. But as soon as you become an employer, you realize that being an employer consumes like 80% of your mental bandwidth and anxiety. And it's really hard. No one goes to uni to become an employer. But the consequences of doing employment badly, like, absolutely diabolical. Your reputation's ruined. You can have millions in fines, and it makes employers, petrified of employing people. And what occurred to me, the real insight was 98% of businesses in Australia are SMEs. Very few, if any, of them have any real skill or experience at employment. They're petrified of employing more people, but they offer about 70% of jobs in the country. So if our engine house of the economy, small and medium-sized businesses, are petrified of employing people, then the whole country and the whole economy is being choked. And that is what I've been working on ever since, to make employment easier and more valuable for everyone. So that was it. And that's what I just wake up every day trying to work on that problem. And to bring it back to Employment Hero, I'd already created the law firm and then an employment services business. And then I read Why Software Will Eat the World by Andreessen Horowitz and recognized that, wow, a human services business is going to be replaced by a technology business, a SaaS business, and walked into the office the next day and said, all right, we're going to create a SaaS platform. And that was Employment Hero.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of our listeners, founders and investors trying to support founders, Would love to get some insights into some of the creative or great ways you've generated leads, because there's a lot of listeners that have businesses and the product is generally not the problem. It's finding the customers. And as an extension to that, do you use channel partners? Because a lot of the portfolio we work with and a lot of listeners we talk to are trying to work out how to find channel relationships to get scale. Is there any sort of insights you can share there?
Yeah, definitely. There's two points. The first one is interesting things that we've done to create leads. Probably the best example of that was during COVID. We didn't know what was where we're going to land. I always referred back to the terrible footage of the tsunami in Japan and not knowing whether we were on high ground or low ground, and it was like, shit, we might get wiped out. But if we're going to get wiped out, we're going to do it while we're helping people. And so during COVID, we just did everything we possibly could to get our product into the hands of product and advice and guidance and everything into the hands of SMEs affordably. We cut our prices or we gave it away. We ran webinars 3 or 4 times a week. We built product to manage the JobKeeper program. We just did everything we possibly could to help people. And that is the best way to find customers. And it just paid off for years. People were really appreciative of help. So yeah, the best way to find customers is to just focus on helping people, give them what they need. The second point I would make around channel partnerships is we had a sort of ambitious plan to leverage corporate partnerships to grow in our early stages. So it started with Super. We partnered with AMP. They were one of our Series A investors as well, AMP Venture Capital, which no longer exists. We went, you've got this massive long tail of SMEs that don't get any advice, don't get any guidance or support, and we can be the platform to help them manage employment better and add value. And so that was one example, but that actually rolled into a national partnership with ANZ Bank, which just came out of the sky. Like, it was absolutely amazing. And we just wrapped our arms around it. And for a couple of years there, every ANZ Bank customer was offered Employment Hero free. They paid us a good license fee and promoted the hell out of Employment Hero. And I think leveraging those corporate partnerships is that when you're a startup, it seems a bit strange that we're just a startup. How do we leverage those partnerships? That can be the biggest lever in the world to get your distribution. And it worked for us. I remember driving home dropping one of my colleagues off at home, and I was saying, I reckon we can get these big corporates to pay us to promote our product to their customers, like positive CAC. And it's like, he's like, no, I don't think we can. I'm like, I reckon we can. And that's exactly what happened. So if you can find a partnership that brings positive CAC and distribution, like, run with it, take it all the way.
That sounds like a really positive experience. So in our experience, often having a corporate on your cap table, like you mentioned, ANZ Super being an investor, can be,
AMP.
Sorry. Yeah, it can be problematic. But what's been your experience with having strategics on the table? That example sounds quite positive in terms of how it ended up playing out. But yeah, what's been your experience? Have there been lessons learned from having strategics on the cap table?
Well, yeah, that's getting into a good era. Look, AMP Capital was in Series A and they sold out pretty quickly. They shut that down. So that was early on. But Seek led our Series B and C, and they're our second largest shareholder. So we've had a strong relationship with Seek. We probably haven't been able to partner and deliver services in the ways that we envisaged originally, but they've been a fantastic shareholder. They just haven't been the strategic partner that we were looking for. But I think that's when you, like you say, like having a strategic on your board, you got to realize, like, the bigger you get, the bigger your to-do list is. And if there's this small startup that is just like a mosquito in your ear saying, we want help, we want you to help us with distribution, we want all these things, that they're going to say, I'm sorry, but we've got all these other things we're trying to do, and we can't prioritize you just because we put some dollars in you. So if you're going to get a strategic on your board, dampen your expectations of anything that they might deliver.
We
But if
see
they
it all
bring
the
capital-
time.
If they bring
Yeah.
capital, then that's what you should expect, a capital investor.
Yeah, often there's excitement in the early stage where a founder tells us, "Oh, I've got these strategics and they're going to deliver X, Y, and Z," and then I've never met any strategics that like being negligent or lying, but then they just get busy, or the key person in the strategic leaves, or the CFO does a review of the balance sheet one day and says, "Why the hell are we provisioning for this thing here? Let's just get rid of it," and it ends up sucking up a lot of energy when they may have been able to get easier money somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, and don't give up either, because I've stay tuned. I think over the coming months there'll be a partnership with Seek that will be really exciting, that we'll announce properly. So just bide your time and stay patient. And with AMP, they sold out exactly. They restructured their business. They sold out. They missed out on 100x return. They could have done very well out of Employment Hero had they not sold out at Series B.
You know how you're listening to a podcast and then it stops for an ad and it's really annoying? Well, that's what
Yeah.
this is.
Oh, God. What are we doing ads for?
From an investment perspective, what does Tribe invest in?
We invest in B2B tech companies post-revenue with scaling sales and the early inklings of their scalable sales engine that are looking to expand into the UK or US markets.
One of the main reasons I think Tribe is different is that we focus on a low volume of deals. We roll up our sleeves and add real value to our portfolio.
For sophisticated investors that are interested in investing to early stage technology companies that are scaling into global markets, we have both a fund that invests across a portfolio of ventures and also a syndication model where investors can choose the investments that they prefer on a deal by deal basis.
And enough of that. Back to the podcast. Well, I'd love to switch gears if we could focus on the scale up phase. So if we can go back and think about if you were going to do it again, what you'd do differently and what you'd do the same but more of.
What I would do differently is localization earlier. So what we did again, pretty unconventional. I think this is a theme you'll hear consistently with Employment Hero and the way we operate. But during COVID, when everything locked down and we knew that we couldn't get on a plane for what could have been years, probably was actually close to years, we said, well, none of our competitors are going to expand globally they can't build internationally because they can't get on a plane. Let's do it remotely. Let's become a remote first company and expand into all the countries that we want to expand into, but we'll just have to do it from our offices, from home. And so we launched into the UK, Singapore, Malaysia, New Zealand, and got the product out there. But what we didn't have was like really experienced people on the ground with that local product knowledge. And so I think we should have localized earlier. We should have brought more expertise in. I think we wasted a bit of time there. So I'd still do it. I'd definitely do it, but I'd just bring in more local expertise and solve some of the problems that we took too long to solve. What was the second part? What would I do more of?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd do more of those partnerships, like find corporate partners. They're not good at dealing with SMEs. They're good at big corporate stuff. And if you can be their entry point into the SME market, then there's a great synergy there. And just have a lot of fun. Like, I think that's the other thing. Just have lots of fun with your team. We do have a lot of fun as a company, and we'll come back to that as well.
You mentioned they're going into multiple markets. Any lessons from doing that in terms of timing or any markets that you might, in hindsight, have preferred to ignore or sequence in a different way?
Look, Southeast Asia, I think we went in there, again, back to the partnership piece. We went in there expecting to do a big rollout with Seek. And so it pushed us in there probably earlier than we should have gone in there. And what we realized once we were in there was that propensity to pay is much lower in Southeast Asia. Wages are much lower. So the alternative to SaaS is human labor, and it's cheap. And also the expectations around SaaS products are like quite high. So high expectations, but low propensity to pay. And we didn't put as much localization effort in as we should have or could have in hindsight. Yes, it was not that we could have, you're always spreading your resources thin. But just recently, we've had to restructure the business, consolidate our SEA team into our ANZ team. Unfortunately, that meant that we had to lay off around 40 people. It's a really difficult time. It's the first time in our history that we've ever laid people off. And we're not out of Southeast Asia. We just realized that we've got to do it more effectively with better unit economics. And we will. I have no doubt we'll smash it. We'll just have to do it in a better way.
Yeah, hindsight's one of those wonderful things. I think the thing that we see quite regularly is that every market is actually a lot different to what we imagine the existing market is, and there are just some dynamics. And what you said there before, when you're in a low-cost labor environment, then your competition is actually labor versus SaaS, which that probably was a bit hard to forecast going in. And do you think there's a way of only doing some expansion tests through channel partners first before landing boots on the ground? Or do you really just have to have the boots on the ground, and sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong?
There's definitely a great way of operating, which is through partnerships that I would try and replicate if we possibly could wherever we can. And that the example is KeyPay. So I don't know if you know the history, but Employment Hero and KeyPay were created at around about the same time. I was the sole investor into KeyPay, and we made that our payroll product from day one. So Employment Hero and KeyPay were basically built together, but with two different founding teams, but with a crossover shareholding. And the way that KeyPay, like they only needed to raise a small amount of capital from me, and they grew to like great scale because they had this model, which was white label everything. Like it was all about white label. And so when you have partners, and payroll is like essential, it's not a need, it's not a want to have, it's an essential tool. So great product, great team, incredible founders with this white label partnership approach. And what it meant was that your partner's spending all the money on CAC. You just have to deliver a great product, but you've got really low CAC, really low overheads, and great distribution. So that's the way to do it. If you want to experiment, white label, get other people to spend the money on getting the product out there, get market fit, and then if you want, at some point, go back in under your own brand if that's what you need to do. But you look at the KeyPay model originally, like before we ended up acquiring 100% of KeyPay about 3 years ago now. If you look at their model for their first decade, it's spectacular results. Like they just did so well.
You mentioned there your investment into KeyPay. What's been your experience with VC and investors?
It's been really good. I've done a lot of startups, really. I've done Power to Motivate, Employment Hero, KeyPay, a few other ones along the way. And each time I've gone out to market to raise capital, I've flown over to San Francisco multiple times and done my tour of duty up Sand Hill Road. And I've really enjoyed it. Like, I just find it really exciting. I was just one of those geeky kids that grew up watching Microsoft and Apple sort of explode. And I've just always been like a moth to the moon, like just wanting to be a part of that network. And so I love that experience of raising capital, meeting VCs, pitching our ideas. And I think my advice would be, love it, like lean in, enjoy the process. Don't be afraid of it. These are good people. Like they want to find great founders. They want to find great businesses, and you want to find the right fit for you, but lean into that process. And the best part is when you've got 2 or 3 term sheets and you get to play that game. And that's the best part. Every round, you just want to get into a position where you've got 3 or 4 term sheets, hopefully, and you get to play that game of, well, offer more and we'll see what we can do. So get yourself in that position. That's the ultimate position to be in, and then enjoy it. In terms of investors, also, like really good. Like Michelle Decker led our Series A. She's from One Ventures. She's been incredible to deal with. She's very calm. She's very supportive. I can be a bit of a hothead. She knows how to calm me down. It's just, yeah, she's been great. Actually, everyone on our board, and as we've progressed, we've got to TCV and Insight and big US funds. They've all been good to deal with. I've got no complaints. It's part of business, having investors, and makes you more mature, makes you operate better. It's part of the game.
You touched on the Australian investor community and the US. Could you talk us through some of the key differences that you notice, whether that be your style in which was effective, or that things that just founders should be really cognizant of when they're pitching a Australian VC or high net worth, and then the reverse in terms of over in the US as well?
Yeah, I think in Australia, so Airtree is one of our investors. Again, they've been spectacular. John Henderson was the first sort of contact there. And I think what he brought, like what you really have to realize is in Australia, there's only a handful of VCs and they'll each have a different lens that they want to look through. And what I realized with Airtree was that they were all about your SaaS metrics, and they really helped us to like tighten up all of the screws and get our SaaS metrics on a platform that we could really pitch and be proud of like where we sat. But we needed to work through some things to understand what our SaaS metrics, and they helped us do that. So I think in Australia, know each of the different funds and what their sort of investment criteria are, and then play to those issues. Whereas in the US, there's a lot more competition, there's a lot more funds out there. And the advice in the US is like, don't undersell yourself. Americans are so good at self-promotion. They're so articulate, they're so bullish on themselves. Australians are like wallflowers. We're so reticent to boast. But if you want to pitch to a US VC, you got to boast. You've really got to get behind yourself. It's one of the problems I think we have in Australia is this like tall poppy syndrome where you don't want to boast, you don't want to stand up and put your head up because you're going to get shot at. But in the US, they don't give a shit. They just go out and say what they need to say and get back themselves. We need to get better at that. And like, if there's any founders here, like just back yourself and don't hold back on telling people how good you are, even though in Australia it's not our way.
Oh, it's so true. And if, in the US, if you don't stand up and make those bold statements, they don't take you seriously.
Yeah.
They write you off.
Yeah. They're so good at it. Like you listen to US founders, like they're just so bullish. Very envious of how well they pitch themselves.
Yeah, we take an expansion mission of founders there a couple of times a year. We were there 6 weeks ago or something? 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, 4 weeks ago.
And just reminded of the US environment where it's just get the job done. They don't get involved in as much crap as we seem to get involved in here. It's a lot more positive over there. Like we even met with the bank manager who's like invested in crypto, invests in startups, just loves startups. Like, who can I introduce you to? Like the energy to want people to succeed is just really great. And that's why we really want to take founders over there almost to get an injection of positivity each year to defend themselves a little bit against the Aussie environment.
Yeah. And I think now in particular, like with this election cycle and Trump and Elon at the wheel, they're going to they're just going to say, go. Like, it's like shooting a starter's gun into the US tech scene. And I think Australian founders need to recognize that the game's just started. Like, we need to lift our game and compete, be more competitive, more bullish, and less distracted than ever, because the world's about to change again.
Well, that's a good segue into the topic of AI. You can't do a podcast in this day and age without having AI bingo. So let's get there. We see ourselves we see the world at the beginning of AI, but at the same time, I think AI is a lot more progressed than people understand in the Australian market. Where do you see AI playing out for Employment Hero and your businesses? What are the focus areas, and how are you approaching it?
I agree completely. It's a huge area of opportunity. In our case, probably the predominant view of AI is around automation. So we've launched an AI product called Smart Match, which is a recruitment tool. Sort of brings us back to the Seek partnership, where it's phenomenal what we can do. You can create a profile as a job seeker, and we can match your profile to all of the roles on our platform and present your profile to the most appropriate roles in advance of the role becoming vacant. So every business on our platform has a talent pool built for every role in their company so that if any role becomes vacant, there's already people who are interested in working for you, and they've already put their CV into the top of the pile. That wouldn't have been available without AI. So that's automated and probably cuts about 80% of the time it takes to recruit somebody. You don't need to post a job ad. You've already got candidates. So that's one example. Other examples are payroll, like automating payroll. We bought Employment Innovations earlier this year. It's one of Australia's largest payroll bureaus, because we're partnering the people who are running payroll with engineers who are specifically building AI to basically automate the payroll processing steps down to as much as possible, to automate as much of the payroll process as possible. You'll still need payroll experts, but you'll be able to do the job much quicker. Implementations, again, using AI, we've built out a implementations product where it used to take about 6 weeks on average to pull all the different data sets from our customers to implement our product. We're pulling HR data, payroll data, ledger data, all sorts of different data. Then we've got to polish it all up and get it into the right places. But we've built an AI tool that can do that in minutes. So just carving out weeks, months worth of work. So they're just some examples of what we're doing. There's a fair bit else going on at a general level, in that every engineer now is working with agents to make them more productive. And we're seeing incredible improvement in productivity across our engineering team as well. It's such an exciting time. It's really revolutionizing everything we do.
You mentioned Seek again there. So given what the Smart Match is going to do, and given Seek is a large supportive shareholder, how have you handled that product overlap that quite often happens when, like, corporate investors often invest in something that's within their space because they're interested, and we just often see that the startup then bleeds a little bit into their space. It's a very common thing that happens. And yeah, have you traversed that?
We're traversing it as we speak. I think that what I'm learning a lot about the recruitment industry as we enter the industry. Like, we're starting from first principles, and what we've recognized is that 75% of jobs don't get advertised. Seek have 80% market share in the 25% of the jobs that get advertised, but there's this massive blue space for us to, again, focus on our mission, which is to make employment easier and more valuable for everyone. So how do we help those businesses who want to recruit people, but they don't want to advertise? And that's really where we're playing, is an AI-driven play to make recruitment faster and easier, but not necessarily by chopping into Seek's market. Their market is actually what they call or refer to as maximum reach. So you want maximum reach to the job seeker community, and they're looking for maximum skill set. They want the best left-handed dentist in New South Wales to come and work in Armidale or something. So they need really broad reach to find that person. And that's why you pay a lot to advertise for those skills, because you're getting maximum for those people, because you want maximum reach and maximum skill set for the particular role. We don't have that database, and it's unlikely we will. So if you put those two things together, Employment Hero really starts where Seek stops, which is onboarding and employment management. So there's a great partnership to be had there. But if we can inject Seek candidates into our customers, and we've got 300,000 businesses on our platform, we can give them massive reach into the SME market and position Seek candidates for our customers so that they're getting better candidates and Seek's getting better distribution. So there's a win-win for everyone. We just have to work our way through it.
Super exciting. If you were building Employment Hero today with all the advancements in AI and also just broadly tech, what would be some of the key things you would do differently? Or if you're a founder just trying to enter into a SaaS market, any things you would want them to think about before they just go out there and build?
I don't think so. The difference is that you're more productive with AI as an engineer, as a marketing person. Like any task that's required in your business, you can be better at it and more productive if you really intentionally leverage any AI that's available for you. So I just think you have to do that. And if you do that, you can probably cover a lot more ground with a lot less capital. So fewer heads, better product, faster product development and iteration, better product-led growth. But it's not really like we've always tried to do all of those things. We just haven't been able to. We're 1,300 employees now. We've had to recruit lots and lots of employees to get it done. If we were starting today, I think we'd probably end up with the same product, the same geographic spread, but we would have done it faster and with fewer people and better SaaS economics.
We don't only invest in B2B tech companies. We also run missions over to the US and the UK, as well as offsite, which we open up to the broader ecosystem. That's founders, that's investors.
Our missions are about taking founders and investors into the UK and US markets so that, one, they can understand what it takes to scale into those markets and set up shop in those markets, but also to see over the horizon into the latest tech, how capital is being allocated so that they can come back home and transform and scale their business.
Yeah, I like the way we put on panels of founders that have been there and done it, panels of investors. So then that way they get some time pitching to US or UK investors, the channel partners that we put them in touch with. It's really trying to get them into market so they can establish exactly what they need to do in order to scale a really great business over there.
Yeah, we really prioritize this not being tech tourism or something that you could simply YouTube or Google or GPT the answer to from home. It's really about experiencing and immersing in these environments where you viscerally experience scale. You get to understand disruption and how these technologies are actually being applied in market, and therefore how you can navigate and build a scalable business into those markets.
If this is something of interest, shoot us a DM. And enough of that, back to the podcast.
Ben, I want to switch gears just a little bit. Adrian DeMarco, who's one of our shareholders and venture partners at Tribe and has been on our podcast, and he's obviously built Technology One through to quite a success story at, what is it now, $8 billion market cap at the moment. But one of the things he talks about on the podcast in particular and reminds us of is you have to be willing to stand up for what you feel is right, even when those situations might come at a cost. And I'm reminded as well of Elaine Stead, one of the original Tribe co-founders, who obviously did the same. What are things that you feel you need to stand up for that are important to stand up for? And how do you go about making that decision as well?
Yeah, there's probably two compartments, and I have to be really clear here. There's things that Ben Thompson believes are important and that we should stand up for, and then there's things that Employment Hero believes are important that Employment Hero should stand up for. And it's getting difficult now that we're getting bigger, that what Ben Thompson does and what Employment Heroes are important, they get blurred. And I guess I'm at a point where it's like, shit, if I say anything, then it's going to be seen as coming from the business and it's not necessarily from me. And how do you separate the CEO from the human? So there's on some of the things, I completely agree with Adrian in terms of bad things happen when good people do nothing. If you see bad things happening, then you have a moral obligation as a leader. And I'm a 51-year-old person in Australia. I feel like I'm at that age where if I see bad things happening, I should say something about them. That's called leadership. And it's incumbent on all of us to show leadership. And so say something. In that case, for me personally, I'm a more libertarian. I'm not a member of any political group, but I look at legislation and people legislating for the sake of legislating, and that you just accumulate these massive amounts of regulation. I don't like that. And if I see legislation or regulation for the sake of regulation, I'll probably say that's unnecessary. And I think the current legislation, which hopefully has just been defeated around the misinformation and disinformation laws, I personally didn't think that was very well drafted legislation. I don't think that's where we should be going. That's me personally. It's got nothing to do with Employment Hero. So that's on the personal side. On the business side, we have a really unique way of working. It's called the EH way. It's mission first, remote first, and apolitical. And those things stack up. So our mission is to make employment easier and more valuable for everyone. If we see things out there that are counter to that mission, then as a business, we will say something about it and we'll try and make change. An example of that is I had a fairly public blow up with Host Plus. And the reason I spoke up about that was because I felt it was really bad for consumers, for members of super funds. What they were proposing to do was ban advertising of super during onboarding. They wanted to make it that you could advertise at the footy ground and you could advertise on TV, but at the time that you're actually being onboarded into a new job and you need to make a choice of fund, then you can't see any alternative products. You only get your default fund delivered to you. And it just so happened that Host and some of these other funds had a lot of young members and they wanted to retain those members. And so they'd gone to the government and they'd pretty much got a deal that they were going to just ban advertising on platforms, onboarding platforms. And that would have led to a massive reduction in choice for consumers. And it would have meant that more money was being spent on inefficient advertising, such as footy sponsorships and TV advertising, rather than like really low cost but effective advertising during that really important point of onboarding. Now, for us, it's only a single percentage of our total revenue, and it wasn't going to wipe us out if this legislation had gone through. It was really, I was just annoyed that these funds had a self-interest in doing that, and that the deal was pretty much going to go through unless somebody spoke up about it. So I spoke up about it. I challenged the CEO of Host Plus to $1 million bet that if they advertised through our platform, they'd get more members at a lower cost. And if they didn't, they'd get $1 million worth of free advertising. But it turns out
it's more the like you see a hypocrisy of you want to be left to advertise in all of these other places, but not in this place. Is that's the big thing?
Yeah, it's worse than that. It's not just hypocrisy. It's actually commercial. The cost of advertising on TV and at the points where people aren't actually onboarding or making a choice of fund, it's tens of millions of dollars that these funds are spending annually on out-of-home advertising. And that money, if they were to spend it at the right point, which is when people need to make a choice, it's a lot more cost effective, and therefore more members' dollars are going back to members. So like the funds all talk about member first. We want to make sure that members, every dollar gets back to a member where possible. Well, just go back to first principles. The best way of doing that is to offer choice at the time they need to make a choice, which is actually really cost effective. And it means members are better off. They have more choice and you're spending less money on advertising.
My understanding was there were some others in the employment system space that also owned or were part of some funds, and that they were trying to stream stuff directly to themselves, which I believe is now either being stamped out, or is that true, or have I misunderstood that? Like there were parts of the sector.
There is a competitor who is an onboarding solution, and they did have their own fund, and I don't want to wade in here. There were accusations that it's self-dealing, like where you're basically promoting your own product. But they, well before any of this had blown up, they had already started the divestment process. They recognized that they were conflicted, and that was all off the table. So it was accurate that there was a question mark around self-dealing, but by the time it got to me, I was just coming at it from what's best for the employee, what's best for the consumer. And it wasn't to us, it wasn't going to really make or break us. It just felt like it was the right thing to say.
Ben, you mentioned, I think it was your third pillar of the EH way was the apolitical aspect. Was that right? I'm just keen to unpack that. What does apolitical mean to you, and how do you apply it?
I know it's a conundrum, isn't it? In today's world, being apolitical is almost being political. It's like really hard to distinguish, but the way we apply it is mission first, that to make employment easier and more valuable for everyone. what are the best ways from first principles? What are the best ways we can achieve that? That's what we have to focus on. Remote first, and I'll come back to remote first and our sort of perspectives on DEI, and then apolitical. And within Employment Hero, we just went, look, we've got 1,300 employees spread across 15 different countries. And in every one of those countries, there are all sorts of movements. There are all sorts of political issues. There's political issues here in Australia that are creeping into the workspace. And we just went, if we have to accommodate and promote every political issue in 15 different countries, where people in the Philippines are much more likely to be Catholic and more religious, and people in different countries have other religions, and we've got people in Vietnam, it's a communist country. Like, there's just so many different political issues. It's easier and more inclusive to be apolitical and just say, we're not going to say anything unless it relates to our mission. So if there is a policy issue that cuts across our mission and makes employment harder and more difficult for people, then we might talk about it. But if it's not related to our mission, then just don't bring it to work. I don't care what you do outside of your work hours, but while you're at work, just focus on delivering our mission in the best possible way that you can. That's where we got to. It's not perfect, but I actually think that it produces a better culture and better results. And we can prove that because of our company and our culture and what we've created. It's really worked. And maybe I'll move into that. So our approach to remote first, so it stacks up again. Our approach to remote first is, we're privileged in that we're a technology company and most people, or everybody, can work remotely. If we had a factory or retail outlets or things where people had to go each day, then you're dealing with a hybrid work environment. We've got the luxury of just being purely remote. So we decided that we wanted to be purely remote, and that one of the big factors in that is that I personally am a carer. I've got a son with a rare disease who has very high special needs. He needs 24/7 supervision, and I have to be at home. I could not run this business and operate effectively if I had to get in a car and drive to the city every day and work from an office. I just couldn't do my job as a father. And so being remote first actually works for me because I'm a carer. But also, you think about all the parents who want to be good parents and drop their kids off at school and pick them up. Remote first is better for them. What about all the people who live in regional and remote areas? I went to school and university. I grew up in the country. There are a lot of smart people who live in regional centres around Australia and around the world. They're basically, if they can't come to the office, they're left out. So if you want to be inclusive, offer as much flexibility and the opportunity to work remotely. And then your talent pool is the whole planet. It's an incredible way to engage people. We have the most diverse workforce. If you bring together the 1,300 heroes that work with us, you'll see true diversity in thought, diversity in personality, diversity in skills, diversity in race, religion. Everything that DEI wants to achieve, we actually achieve. Our gender diversity is best in class, but we haven't done it because we've conformed to the DEI agenda. We've done it because we want to create truly, in our own way, the most diverse and inclusive business that we possibly can. And that comes through being remote first and being apolitical. I think that our approach produces great results, and the results speak for themselves. I'd like to just talk about some of those results just to show people what's possible.
Yeah, no, that'd be good.
Yeah, we've employed over 2,500 people since we started 10 years ago. We've grown from 180 employees in 2020 at the start of COVID to 1,300 today. We have employees in 15 countries around the world from all walks of life. Of our total current employees, more than 150 employees have a tenure of over 5 years, which is phenomenal given that we only had 180 employees 4 years ago. So people have stuck around. And of those that have been around, 47% for over 5 years, 47% of those people are women. 53% of those with more than 10 years in the business are women. So we're providing a workplace that provides longevity for women in employment. In 2024, the resignation rates, 52% women, 48% men. Women hold 45% of management positions across Employment Hero, but when you exclude engineering, 62% of all management positions are held by women. In 2024, 45% of all promotions went to women, 75% of promotions at a management level went to women, 55% of annual values awards went to women. Of parental leave, 49% is taken by males and 51% by females. So, we're providing that ability for both men and women to support family. And only 24% of terminations last year were women. So I think those results are just best in class in terms of gender diversity and how we operate. But it wouldn't be possible without the EH way. Like, it opens the talent pool to everybody everywhere. We have employees in small regional towns all over Australia, all over the world, 15 different countries. It doesn't matter where you live, you can participate and be a hero and contribute to our mission. And one example of that just highlights, well, a couple of examples. One, my chief of staff lives on a farm 45 minutes outside of Moree, which is 6.5, 7 hours from Sydney, northwestern New South Wales. She is a powerhouse. She's incredibly smart, incredibly capable, but she chooses to live in regional New South Wales. Well, she's got a great job and she does a great job. She would never have access to that if we went remote first. I've also had women in the business send me the most touching messages when they've managed to buy their first home because they've been able to move out of capital cities and into regional areas where housing is more affordable. And they've said, if it weren't for Employment Hero and working remotely, I could not have ever dreamt of moving out of my parents' home with my son and buying my first house. You can't underestimate the power of being more inclusive by creating the ability to employ people from any background, with disabilities, carers, parents. Like, it doesn't matter what your gender is. We're just not tied up in that. We just want to employ the best people we can find. We have this global gathering every year. We bring all of our staff together, which we've done for the last 3 years. This September, we went to Bali, and there's some video out there. I can share it with you, but you only have to watch the video and just see the culture, that the diversity in our workforce and the people that we're bringing together, and the excitement of working on a really important mission and not being distracted by things that aren't relevant to that mission. That's what we're here to do, is deliver a really important outcome for the planet, for every customer we possibly can. Like, right back to the start of the podcast, like, employers find it hard to employ people. We want to make it easier. If we don't make it easier for employers to employ people, there's more unemployed people. When people are unemployed, the rate of suicide increases by 20 to 30%. So, like, when we talk about our mission, we believe that we are helping to keep people alive. We want to find them jobs and we want to keep them alive. And we want to make employers feel proud and confident of who they are and what they do in society. Like, we just take this stuff so seriously. But we don't conform to traditional DEI policy. That's who we are.
If you've got that level of retention of the older cohorts of staff, that is not easy to achieve. But the reporting that's coming through is using words like vile culture, shoddy HR practices. That seems to be in total opposite to what your stats are showing. So how do you respond, and what would you say to the people that are saying those words?
Well, firstly, I tell you what, it hurts to hear that after pouring my blood, sweat, and tears into building a business that is primarily about building a great culture. I've spent 25 years and 10 years just with Employment Hero building that culture. And I actually think it is completely unlike what you experience internally. But I do appreciate the feedback. I hear it. There must be people who feel that way. I'm sorry that they feel that way, but with 2,500 people have been employed through the company, and I think any company that has employed people of any number, if you had 100 employees, there's going to be somebody who has a bad feeling, and it's just inevitable that there will be a small portion, because not every company and not every culture is right for everyone. And particularly when you're a fast growing startup, our company culture is defined by ambition. We want to be the largest platform on earth for managing employment. We want to create as many jobs for people, like helping people create jobs, and we want those jobs to be high quality jobs. And we are incredibly focused on that. That means that we move very quickly. We expect people to perform at their best and to keep up with our cadence, which is incredibly fast. We actually talk about it like a peloton in the Tour de France or something, where when you've got like a really fit peloton, a fit group of people who have been riding together and training together, and they can move really quickly. And new employees coming to the business, we need to help them on ramp into the peloton. And then we run this quarterly theme every quarter, every 90 days, where a group of employees will take on that quarterly theme, and they'll go to the front of the company and ride even harder, push even harder, and that drives the peloton faster. But we do occasionally see that people don't want to operate at that intensity, and they drop off the back of the peloton and they leave the business. And that's unfortunate, but it doesn't mean that we need to slow the whole company down to the pace of the slowest rider. We just can't afford to do that. We're too focused on the good that we're doing with our platform. Yeah, it's just, that's the way it happens. In terms of the actual headlines, using words like vile and toxic, shoddy, these are sensational headlines that sit at the front of the story, but the actual story is behind a paywall. You have to pay $39 a month to read the story. And if you get behind the paywall and you read the story, you'll see that it actually says, the journalist actually says, we don't suggest that any of these claims are true. It's a handful of people have made some negative comments, but they're not representative of the actual company culture. We've got actually an incredibly balanced and inclusive culture. And it just hurts that these things are being said. But we continue to learn, we continue to improve, we will continue to learn from all of this feedback and improve our business. And it's great that you've given me this opportunity to address the claims and straighten the record.
And this information you're sharing with us here, like these stats, you've shared this information with the publication writing these articles?
Yeah, we've shared all of those results with the publication that wrote those articles. So they know the truth about the business and the diversity of our culture and the balance of our culture. So they're aware of it. We've certainly shared it via LinkedIn and Twitter as well, or X. So it's out there. And I've got to say that the response to that post I put on LinkedIn was just outstandingly positive. It was, I think we had 500 or 600 positive responses. We've had many dozens of reshares and just a stream of positive comments from customers, past employees and current employees who absolutely love our culture.
If you can go back to when you were first building Employment Hero, who were you taking feedback from and taking it on board versus going, I appreciate your opinion, but I'm going to park that? And now that you're more an established founder, the business has grown, 1,300 employees, has that mix of people changed?
I don't think it's genuine. I really don't think it's changed. I think, like, first and foremost, my wife, she's the most sensible person in my life, and she is quick to spot when I'm off track and give me some guidance. So it starts at home. Then I've got like some really great mates who have been successful and in business, and they help steer me in the right direction as well. Our customers, like, really have to listen to our customers, like, very, very carefully. And we can always do better for our customers, and that's what we have to do. Our customers are both now B2B, like business owners and employers, but also consumers. The last part of our mission to make employment more valuable, it's all about leveraging the purchasing power of our platform to make employees better off. We're going to do that better, helping find people work, like through Now into recruitment. So really listening to them and how we can do that job better. And then there's just confidence. There's a handful of people, including our investors and Adrian Bunter, who we spoke to, who I just hold them in such high esteem and genuinely do listen to what they have to say. It's a lot of experience around the table. You can't ignore it.
Well, you're now big enough and successful enough that you're getting feedback coming via the media. How are you processing that? How do you work out whether there's stuff to take on board? How are you handling this environment that you've got with, I guess, lots of incoming external thoughts?
It's a new aspect, yeah, learning that you get criticism from people who don't know you. And I think you just have to compartmentalize some of that. If people don't understand you or how you operate, you don't want to give too much weight to their criticism. So don't pay it too much attention. Operate from first principles, like definitely think about how to achieve the best outcome for the people that you're working for, like our customers, and just focus on that, on our mission. And if you know that you're doing the right things and working for the right reasons, then just like you're going to cop some criticism. But if it's off course, don't pay too much attention. I don't know. I think that's an area that I'm learning. Like this is a journey, and you hit these sort of like level ups. I feel like I'm in the middle of a new level up, understanding how to deal with criticism, public criticism, and media. I just have to keep learn as quickly as possible.
There's a video online. It must have been like the early 90s at an Apple conference. No, it would have to have been late 90s, where Steve Jobs had killed off a number of projects. And there was a developer in the audience who just ripped into him, like, incompetent, you don't understand the business, why have you gone and done this? And Jobs pauses and then just gives an explanation as to why sometimes you have to change and you have to pivot, and some things have to die and some things have to start again. And some of the media has just been around perceptions of either ex-staff or whatever else on changes to strategy. Our view is that you have to move quickly, and that's what Steve was trying to communicate. For people who look at companies that change a lot, what would your message be to them?
My message would be, you don't understand us at all, because you're missing all the context. You're on the outside. You don't know what's going on inside. If you were inside, you would realize that I've worked on a single mission for 25 years to make employment easier and more valuable for everyone. Our BHAG is to have 10 million monetized monthly active users on our platform. We make decisions every 90 days on what are the best ways for us to get where we want to be as quickly as possible. And we prioritize based on a thing called V2B, velocity towards BHAG. What is going to maximize the velocity towards our BHAG and towards achieving our mission? It may look from the outside like we're pivoting, and that's why there's some reporting about just don't call it a pivot, because it's like sailing. One of my favorite sports is sailing, and you can't sail into the wind. You know where you want to go, but you have to tack upwind to get there. It doesn't mean you're not sailing towards the mark. The mark is where the mark is. We all know where we as a company know exactly where we're going, but conditions change. The wind shifts direction. The market shifts direction. You tack your way upwind to get to the mark. You're not changing course, like in terms of your destination. It would look that way if you were outside the business, or if you were inside the business and not fully engaged with the way that we work. And I hope that like the vast 99% of heroes understand that, and I'm sure they do, but you're just missing that context. We are crystal clear on where we're going, and we are not pivoting. We're just tacking to get to our destination in the fastest possible way.
I like tacking as an alternative vernacular for pivoting. Absolutely required.
And I think that's the distinction. If you've got a passion and a vision and an energy of this longer term thing, whereas some companies do pivot products, but that's not what you're talking about. You're just tactically saying today we've got to make some changes. There are affected people. It's sad, it's difficult, and like you said earlier, this is the first time you've had to make those decisions. But we see a lot of companies end up dying because they wait too long and they're not willing to make those changes.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it kills me. I think jobs are sacred. Like, I was at a conference recently. I was like, every job is sacred. We need to create as many jobs and protect as many jobs as we can, but not protect them if they're not commercially viable. We have to make the right decisions. But if we can do our job as a platform, as a business, we're creating more employment opportunities. If we have to cut some rough edges off along the way and position ourselves in the right way, I just have in the forefront of my mind, the bigger our platform gets, the more employment opportunities we're creating globally. We're all about compliance, making sure that people get paid exactly what they're supposed to get paid, when they're supposed to get paid it. So quality employment opportunities, no dodginess. So we just have to do that job well, and we're benefiting society. If occasionally it means we've got to adjust the structure of the business to achieve that outcome, then that's what we have to do. It's not nice, but we have to do it occasionally. We've only really ever done it once.
We operate in an industry that has some criticisms, and often it's public, often it's private. But I thought I might get your feedback on a bit of a thought. We believe that diversity is helpful and that it adds to culture and it adds to decision making and implementation. We also come under attack quite a lot because we ourselves and the industry haven't been able to invest 50-50 to female founders. And there's even some articles in some news environments that say it's actually very simple. VCs, they just don't want to invest in women. They boil it down to it's just a simple choice, which I don't think actually stands up to scrutiny for a whole lot of reasons. But we do believe that there is a opportunity to improve it. And so we then, like for our offsites, find sponsored places to get female founders that may not be able to afford it, or maybe they're not at the stage yet to come in. We run internal things that are female focused and therefore under the umbrella of DEI. But then when it comes to actually making an investment decision, we have a fiduciary duty to our LPs to back the companies that we believe can achieve the best return. And that is a function of our deal flow. And our deal flow has a very small percentage of female founders in the B2B space that are looking for Series A or above scale-up capital. But we still try and do things to improve that. So is that where we're being in the EH way kind of framework, those extracurricular activities to try and improve a societal thing, is that not the right approach?
Look, I think you have to be meritocratic. Like, if you're an investor, it needs to be a meritocracy. And some of the best people I work with are women. It's not about your undercarriage. It's about like what your capabilities are, your intelligence, your work ethic, your passion for our mission. And thankfully, being a sort of employment space in HR, we end up with a lot of females joining our business. So I can only speak from my experience and my business. I can't give you advice on what you do as a VC. I think you've got different inputs and different considerations, but I want to be as meritocratic as possible. I don't want any woman to believe that she's been given a job because she's a woman. And I've had that feedback delivered really clearly to me from the females that I work with, the women that I work with. They don't want to be treated differently. And frankly, like our biggest issue in recruitment and getting diversity into our business is we've got this test that you have to pass. That is it's a intelligence test, and a lot of people fail it. It doesn't come down. It's got nothing to do with your gender. It's to do with your intelligence. And so we need more people to pass the test. That's all. Our test is hard. Doesn't apply to every role in the business. It applies more so to engineering, but it's a very hard test to pass. And it's the biggest constraint on our recruitment. And it's got nothing to do with gender or diversity. It's got to do with intelligence, and it's nothing to do with DEI. Yeah, I don't know. I'll invest in any great idea that I see. I invested in Circle Up. I thought it was a great idea. Recently, it just got sold. Female founders did a brilliant job. I think they're both great. Ideally, there's 50-50, but there's just not as many female participants in the industry, women in the industry. I wish there were more. I would let's do whatever we can to encourage more women to participate. Don't discriminate on the basis of gender. It's discrimination.
I think that's a good segue into this next phase of questions. Would love to understand what are some questions that you've never really been asked or very little get publicized that you think people should know about you, about the business? What's something that we don't know that helps build the story?
I think why would somebody do the same thing for 25 years? I've been working on this one insight for 25 years. I wake up every morning thinking about how to make employment easier and more valuable for everyone. I go to bed every night thinking the same thing. In this lifetime, that's my life's work. It's not. I don't need to work. I've exited multiple different businesses, but I do this because I'm incredibly passionate about what we're trying to achieve. We want every employer to feel proud and confident of every job that they can possibly create. And we want every employee to have as many quality employment opportunities as possible. We want to create a stronger economy by achieving our mission. I guess that's what people probably don't understand. It's not about the share price. It's not about the value of the company. I'm just on a mission, and I'm very laser focused about it. And if something gets in my way, I'll talk about it. But it's not about it's not the commercial outcome. It's a societal benefits that I'm all about delivering.
And with that 2 decades plus, what's exciting you now going forward? Looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years. What's exciting you?
I think that the planet is going through a monumental transition with not just AI and robotics, but particularly with Starlink and global satellite. A third of the world's population doesn't have broadband, and they're about to all come online. And they're going to be online in a competitive environment where they're competing against robots and artificial intelligence. And so we want to make sure that, or I want to make sure that as many people on Earth have access to quality employment as possible. And to do that, I've created Hero Foundation. I'm funding Hero Foundation personally. Our mission is to place 1 million people over the next 10 years into employment who are coming from a disadvantaged background. We're starting that by focusing on local communities that need support and better access, particularly women coming from domestic violence backgrounds where they've had to reestablish themselves and finding a job is difficult. People who we're working with about a dozen different charity organizations who are involved in helping people find work. And then we've got this incredible opportunity to connect those job seekers to 300,000 employers with the benefit of AI and all of the other things we've spoken about. So Hero Foundation over the next 5 years will become a much bigger part of my life. It's where I'm putting more and more of my mental and my effort and my money. And it starts local, but eventually I think over the next 5 years, there'll be opportunities to connect people from different parts of the world, from developing regions who are just getting internet for the first time, and we can deliver them education, we can deliver them jobs. Yeah, I think it's 1.8 billion people are in that cohort that we can help. So that I'm finding truly exciting. Alex Goodenough has taken on the managing director role for Hero Foundation, and we're just getting started. We're really early, but I love the startup process. And so this has given me lots of energy. It's another startup inside a startup, but with a lot of social benefit to it. I think that's the thing that's most exciting. And just watching the world like get connected. I was around, I'm old enough to have been around for the .com era, and it feels like it's happening all over again, but with a whole different internet. Like it's satellite internet, global, connecting 1.8 billion people to the world of work. And I want to be like right on the front of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that piece. I think that the volume of population that's about to be connected to a global conversation for the first time ever, and on that DEI aspect, like these are including some cultures that have never had that voice or that access to information before. So it's an incredibly exciting time from that perspective. I totally agree with you on that. And I think that intersection of, we've got a shortage of talent, we've got this remote work capability, we've got this new workforce that can now empower that. But at the same time, we've got these AI levers that are changing or potentially changing the nature of work. It's a really interesting time. And I am curious, as you navigate this forward, like what was the thinking behind the foundation more so than going at this from the existing business model and everything else? Like what's the thinking around specifically the foundation and taking that forward?
Oh, like, to get into the weeds, I was going to do this direct, like personally. I had ideas around how I know that the general area that I was just speaking about is where I wanted to play. And I actually started by looking at, could we fund Starlink dishes and connect remote communities to the internet and start to create employment opportunities. And we did some of that. We worked with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and we put some Starlink dishes out there, and there's an opportunity there. But as soon as I stood back and again asked for advice from people around the table, investors and people I value their opinion, they were like, you've got philanthropic money that you're going to deliver in partnership to Employment Hero. Like, it's just, you're not arm's length enough. Like, you either have to do it inside Employment Hero or don't do it, or do it in a separate way. But there's Employment Hero it's just got so much leverage that we can utilize. It was like, okay, well, I'll do it inside Employment Hero, and I don't take a salary. So I just use what I would take as a salary to fund Hero Foundation. So it's probably the most tax effective way of creating good, and it doesn't take anything away from the business or our investors. I think if I was an investor, I'd want Employment Hero to be focused on the mission and doing all of that. So this is just where I've landed. It's the easiest way to achieve both things without conflict.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
Yep.
Ben, I'm mindful of your time. We've run a little bit over, but really want to thank you for the long form conversation and going deeper into some things that people might not understand. And I think everyone will hopefully take something away from this.
Cool. Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to the critique.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ben.
Cheers.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Ben.
Cheers.
You too.
What were your thoughts, Ash?
I was really interested in just like the broader context. I think my gut feel yesterday was very in line with the truth, where there's a lot of context we aren't hearing, aren't seeing. Very impressed with his laser focus on the mission for 25 years. And I think that last question in particular, the differentiation of pivoting versus tacking. We see a lot of startups pivot because their original business plan or the original idea, there's no business model there anymore, or there's no product market fit, or it's no longer relevant. He's just tacking to ensure that his mission and focus of the business is in that direction. And I think that was a really big takeaway, because when I read that article, like, oh, we can't call it a pivot, I was like, why can't we call it a pivot? Like, that seems weird. That's great clarity. And I think the image he was able to depict in my mind of sailing and tacking is very helpful.
I think for me, one of the not knowing Employment Hero well, it was really interesting to see those stats. I hear the stats on the workforce that has been built and the metrics that have been achieved with his approach and with his style. So I found that very interesting.
I'm going to be interested to see what the
negative responses to this. The counterpoints are the challenge is that a lot of humans have different perspectives, and something that one group finds acceptable and exciting isn't to another. And it's important that the different perspectives are raised. But as my father has often said to me, the last person that tried to make everybody happy got nailed to a cross. That's just not possible, and you're always going to have different views. It's ensuring that a balance of all of the information is able to be shared.
Yeah, I mean, we often criticize ourselves with the label of being in the cheap seats because we don't always know all the information. And that's why I like these longer form conversations where we get to look under the hood a little bit more and just have that curiosity to try and understand.
Yeah, our intention was to learn and grow as founders as well as investors. So I think we go into it with a different intention.
I'm very interested in what Ash's dad thinks. So
and
when we're down in Adelaide, you better organise a barbecue.
100%. He'd love that.
All right, team. We'll catch you on the flippy dippy. Aaron and I've got to go to the bank.
Yeah, fucking, this is going to be fun.
All right, I've got to go.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye, it's us again quickly.
So these offsites that we talk about, where we get founders and investors in Australia together, what are they all about?
The offsites are really about the frameworks and tools to build a sustainable company in a healthy and durable way. So that's looking at the ingredients for a scalable sales machine, but also the ingredients to navigate the inevitable change and conflict that happens as you are scaling and building a high growth company.
The offsite's really for founders and their teams that have gotten over that product market fit phase. We're bringing our portfolio together with other founders. And so what happens is you get to really learn from a broad, diverse group of people that are all participating together. And a lot of the problems that they're facing before coming in is that they've got revenue, they've got levels of growth, but things just aren't working as well as they previously had, or they aren't going the way they want them to. And by sharing some tools and frameworks, just as importantly, the lessons from all the other founders and investors in the room, they then lead with networks that they can then call upon. You end up with 15 or 20 people that you can call and just touch base and get advice and connect with on that journey.
And as much as possible, we provide those frameworks and tools, but a lot of the insights also come from the fellow participants that are sitting across from one another at the table.
If this is something of interest, shoot us a DM.